Louise Butler. I'm from SolarWinds. I work with the MSP division within SolarWinds, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard of SolarWinds itself, your NPM or your Orion. The MSP division is slightly separate in that we look after people like K3 Starcom, providing them software and a whole range of tools. As Stuart mentioned earlier, we have piece of software, basically anything that you need to do which requires a piece of technology, chances are we have it. And if not, we'll probably integrate with something that does have it. So the topic of my conversation today, in around the theme of today's event, is about layered security. So what is your acceptable level of risk? So a breach will occur. I think from the previous conversations that we've heard today, that's not something we can deny anymore. So the question is, are you prepared for a breach? Are you confident that your data is recoverable, safe and secure? If you get hacked and sensitive data is stolen, how will this affect the reputation of the business? How often is data restored as a test to show you success? We earlier spoke about it's all well and good having a backup and disaster recovery plan in place, but you have to test it. You have to show that it will be successful if you need to rely on it. What level of security is currently deployed to ensure proper protection? How much risk are you as business owners willing to accept? And what limits on access are provided to employees to avoid potential breaches? So, the market conditions. It's pretty scary. This is basically the amount of data records that are lost and stolen on a daily basis. Over 4.5 million records every day are stolen or lost. Break it down, it's just under 200,000, just over 3,000 a minute. That's 53 records every second. It's not something that we can hide from or deny anymore. Protection is key. SMBs and SMEs are struggling with security and protection of data. Many organizations don't realize that you could be the gateway for larger hacking attempts or theft. So ransomware, as we heard earlier, is a constant business disruptor. Focus is key. Where are you vulnerable? So this shows a breakdown over industry of where data records were lost or stolen. Now 35% is in technology, but 65% is all other businesses, which is something probably all of you were involved. So nobody is safe. Even if there's not a breach, downtime from data loss is a significant problem for businesses. So this is from a study of over 1,000 businesses. 29% experienced employee downtime of between 1 to 8 hours. 27% experienced employee downtime between 8 and 40 hours. And 7% experienced downtime of 40 plus hours. Downtime is a massive cost for a business, something that should be calculated, both the time for remediation, the time you're out, and also the remediation cost. So I've done a little example here. If we have a file server at a 20-user law firm, so for 8 hours, employees don't have access to files, to records, case management, forms, nothing. The firm's partners and associates would typically have a utilisation rate of 70%. So 70% of their time is at a billable rate. During the course of this failure, they're hampered, so they're only working at 30% utilisation rate. The service provider begins remediation work 2 hours after. So the legal partners, there's 4 of them, they have a billing charge of £250 an hour. So it's 70% utilisation rate, that would work out at £175 an hour. We have 10 associates, they bill themselves at £140 an hour, so the effective billing rate is £98 an hour. So we're down for 8 hours. Firstly, we have to pay our managed service provider for the remediation costs. That would be 600 at €100 or £100 an hour. Sorry, I'm from Ireland, so forgive me if I'm using euros. We've 4 partners, so they're working at a reduced capacity, so they have a lost billing of 3,200, and we have 10 associates at a lost billing at 30% utilisation, that's 4,480. So the total cost for 8 hours downtime is 8,280. It's pretty significant, and as I said, everyone will see the cost for the service provider for remediation, but you forget the hidden costs of the downtime, the lack of productivity. It happens to us, even though we're a global organisation. We were down with our sales force a few weeks back for 6 hours. Thousands of people could not work properly. It wasn't our fault, it was Salesforce's fault. But at the same time, you're all sitting around twiddling your thumbs because we need that. We rely on it for phone numbers, for pricing, for customer information, for case management, for everything. So you have to factor that in. And at the same time, only 26% of small businesses perform a daily backup. So, some questions you need to ask yourself internally. What security policies and requirements do you have in place? What do you currently spend on security across the organisation? Have your staff been trained on security protocols? You need to have a defined security cost breach, that's time and money. Understand your potential liability as a business owner. Do you as a stakeholder see a value in security management? And of course, when was your last successful data backup? There is some scary reality, and everything that I show you is referenced below, which when you get the slides you can look for yourselves. But 40% of all businesses have experienced a breach in the last 12 months, and 55% in the US have experienced a breach in the last 12 months. 43% of cyber attacks target small businesses. Again, as I said earlier, they're seen as a catalyst for a larger organisational or hacking attempt. 60% of small companies go out of business within 6 months of a breach. Small businesses are most concerned with protecting client records. 49% of breaches were web-based attacks, and 43% were phishing and social engineering. And 48% of the root cause was a negligent employee or a contractor. So there's common themes coming up. Backup, of course, and disaster recovery, training of employees, and having a proper security protocol in place. You have to have an action plan. You have to restrict end-user access. There needs to be regular employee training. It has to be a fluid thing. It's not something that you put there, this is our system, employee handbook out, and not revisit. It has to be ongoing. Full security and cyber security plan built, and if you don't have it internally, managed by a service provider. Outsource the risk, essentially. Multiple data management locations with proper security protocols and encryption. So the idea of these questions in the starter slide is to get you thinking about what you've got in place currently, because everybody should do an internal review process. And by doing this, you can see where you stand, where you should be, and where you need to be for regulations or for ongoing growth of the business or changing in the market. So the first step in this would be look at your infrastructure, look at your data, and where is the most critical data. So what could be a potential target? Then you need to assess the security. So define your data and security assessment process and where you should be today. Then set a baseline of services, so a minimum baseline that you should be at to help you ensuring ongoing protection. Then decide who's going to manage that. Do you have somebody internally who's competent, or do you want to outsource that to somebody who is more competent? Or again, you just want to outsource that risk. Then you need to define if you have some growth plans for changes in, as we're hearing, regulations. We all know that's going on there. What sort of levels do you need to have in place so that your organisation moves with that? And then make it a repeatable process. So we're seeing more and more that some of our partners are becoming CTOs, being Chief Technical Officers, Chief Security Officers, Chief Information Officers, so that they work with the company, so that they know their growth plans and they can help manage and ensure protection as you as a business grow. There's core protection areas that you need to look at, and there's security stocks. And a lot of the security that you would have to put in place will depend on your sensitivity to risk. So you have infrastructure, you have data security, you have risk and vulnerability management and identity management. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what you'll see is building blocks on top of that, depending how sensitive you are or how much you value the security. So you have endpoint protection, perimeter protection. You'll see at the end here, and some of this we wouldn't even do ourselves, you'd have to outsource it again. But it just goes to show you the level that you have to go to. You won't realise that until you've done a proper discovery. So you need to know where you sit today, and the only way you'll be able to do that is by doing a discovery. Whether you do this internally with your IT department, whether you ask questions of your current MSP or managed service provider, or whether you ask these questions to yourselves as business owners, determine where you sit today and where you need to be. Often, if people are looking after things as they are, you'll be in a good position. But it's no harm in it. It's always good to know that. So these are some sampling questions that we've put together to help our end users. So it's all about, on different levels, from monitoring. What you have in place today is user activity monitored. Are physical devices monitored? Do access points need to be monitored? Do IP-enabled cameras need to be monitored? How are you doing on security? Do you have AVM patch controls in place? Do you have perimeter level security? Do you have mail security? Password management controls? And then on the latter two, we're looking at mitigation of risk and protecting. So if there is a breach, how do you get back up and running? When we've done a discovery, when we've answered those questions, we see where we are today or where we should be today. We have designed different levels so that you can build a package or a service offer where you know from a level 1 that you're doing a good job, but maybe you want to do a bit more from the monitoring of the access points, IP-enabled cameras, etc. Maybe you're not doing such a good job, so you need to start looking at getting managed AV, managed patch. AV is not enough, but AV in itself, if you don't have patch management, is not enough. You have to keep your Windows and all third-party applications up to date for any AV to be effective. And perimeter level mail. And then at level 3, you're looking at things like two-factor authentication, data backup of servers, data backup of workstations, having device encryption, software install management and limitation. Can anybody just download any piece of software that they want? Is there protocols put in place there? And start doing monthly security risk assessments. So check and balance on a continual basis that you're doing right. If you're not doing right, to identify where you're going wrong quickly, and you can address that. And the last level would be somebody who would be, typically we see this in an industry that would be very subject to very strict regulatory bodies, that they don't have a choice but to have very stringent conditions in place. Web filtering, access control, privacy control, SIM management, redundancy, failover. And we would always recommend you should have a CTO, Chief Technical Officer, or CSO services. So they, again, can work with you and your company, making sure you're kept in line with regulations, but also help you with your growth to ensure you don't come up against any roadblocks. It's all about mitigating your risks. So regulation and compliance concerns are being enforced. You need to understand the regulations that require your attention, as security breach laws can have serious consequences. Ignorance is no defence, so you have to be aware or you will be penalised. All well, we heard earlier about reputation. Protect your reputation. If you get a breach, we saw earlier that 60% of businesses fail following a breach. So how will that affect market conditions that you work in? Train and educate your employees. Get a security assessment again on a monthly basis and understand where you are sensitive as a business to the security threats and breaches. The more you outsource, the more you mitigate your risk. So the lead of this presentation is, how much risk are you willing to accept? If you don't want to have that internally, if you don't have the staff or the experience internally, outsource it. Then you're mitigating it. You will require, even if you outsource it, internal processes to manage security, education of employees and having proper policies in place. You need to have a remediation plan if there is a breach and you have to perform remediation. Can you afford the work involved in that? And insurance. It's all about what's your acceptable level of risk. You can never have 100% protection. There's a human element, the human factor. Somebody clicks on something they shouldn't have clicked on. But if you have proper policies in place, prevention measures in place, and security measures in place, you are certainly reducing the majority of that risk. And then you need to have a plan in place for mediation to get your business back up and running as quickly as possible following an occurrence. You can't insure against it. I suppose insuring it is the amount of there's no such thing as an insurance as such for it, but the more layers of security that you put on is almost like layers of insurance against potential breaches. But even backup will be like an insurance for your business.